I'm aboard the MV Nancy on the stunning Huon River, and I'm about to start my journey across what might be Australia's best kept secret, the picturesque island state of Tasmania. Along the way, I'm going to be trying a wide variety of gins, whiskies, ciders, trying to find out why Tassie tops the list as one of the world's best places for those who love a tipple or two. But it won't all just be about the drinks. There'll be plenty of food and adventure thrown in there for good measure too. There is so much to do down here and I can't wait to get cracking. I'm Yazmin Firkins and this is Last Drinks Tasmania. Stick around.
Flying to Tasmania from Melbourne is such a breeze, and after an early morning flight, we find ourselves starting our journey across the Apple Isle in Launceston. Launceston Distillery resides inside Hangar 17, one of Launceston Airport's original buildings and now home to some of Tassie's finest barrel-aged whisky. I'm catching up with head distiller and owner Chris Condon and his lovable companion Angus, the distillery dog.
So Chris, you're the head distiller here at Launceston Distillery. Now this isn't a conventional location for a whisky distillery. Can you tell me a little bit about Hangar 17?
Yeah, it's the oldest aviation building in Tasmania actually, so there's a nice backstory to it. It dates back to the 1930s when the runway out the back was little more than a grass paddock. Launceston and Western Junction here has sort of seen the birth of commercial aviation, and so it's evolved from those early days when the planes were quite basic, and a flight from Melbourne to Launceston would come via Flinders Island. The planes didn't have a long range, and then bigger companies like Ansett, ANA used it, and it was actually the departure point down here before the terminal up the road was built. So after Ansett folded, it was disused for about 13 years. So we're really proud of the fact that the distillery has given it a new lease on life and a new sense of purpose. And we really get pleasure from the old Ansett people who drop in, give us photos and memorabilia. Yeah. They're just happy to see the place used again. So look, it's been a nice repurposing, I think.
Yeah, right, and it's given a great story as well to the place. And you can definitely tell we are close to the airport. We've got planes taking off and landing all around. So it adds to the vibe of being in a hangar, I think, definitely. Yeah. So I see in the background here some beautiful looking stills. Can we go have a look at them?
Let's do that. Come on.
Launceston Distillery's small batch and handcrafted approach to their boutique whisky starts here in their Tasmanian-made stills, and I'm about to get a guided tour.
Can you walk me through your process? So I'm assuming we start here with the grain.
You are. So it's pretty much grain and water in this end. We put the grain up in that white bin and run it through a mill and crack it open. And then in this sort of shallow tank here, we mix the grain with hot water and think of it as a fine porridge. Okay. And we're just trying to dissolve the sugar out of the grain and into the liquid. And once you've got sugar in a liquid, that's your starting point to start fermenting and then the distillation at the end of it. So this is what the grain looks like when we buy it in. It's just malted barley. So that's, like I say, pale, a toasty cereal kind of aroma to it. As a comparison, that's some grain that's been smoked. So have a little smell of that, and the smell of smoke will hit you.
Very smoky.
That's right. So the kind of grain that you're using at the start can influence your whisky.
Okay, and you mix it up for different batches, whether you're just smoking
right, yeah.
or not.
So different, yes, that's right. Different batches, and they end up in a different barrel and things like that. So we crack the grain open and make grist, as we call it. And what we're trying to do is get at that white centre of the grain. That's where we extract the sugar from. And you notice that we haven't milled it to a flour. We've left a lot of the husk intact.
Yep.
So what we'll do is we'll mash it in here, and that husk will sit on this mesh floor, and it'll probably be about that high in the tank, and it forms a bed or a filter, and we just strain that sugary barley water through the bottom. The husk keeps all the solids behind, and once we've run off all the wort, we call it, the sugary barley water, once we've run all that off, we shovel it out at the end of the day. The farmer across the road comes and gets the spent grain for his cows, and it hasn't been wasted. So we've taken the sugar, you know, there's protein fibre left behind, and it's really good cattle feed. The big still is called the wash still, so we just attach, you know, pumps and hoses and pump it into here and heat it up. It takes about 9 hours to run the still.
Okay.
And yeah, we heat it up from below. We've got electric elements underneath, so we can control the heat. So we heat that wash up, and basically, you know, alcohols and other volatiles that give whisky its flavour, they boil at a lower temperature than water. So they'll become a vapour or a steam first and leave all the water and the yeast behind. They don't boil. So what will happen is that steam will rise up the head of the still. So we call this the pot, the shoulders, the head of the still, and it goes across that swan neck.
And that's where all the vapours and the alcohol, everything's going.
They go across. So think of steam hitting a mirror or a window. It's sort of like that vapour comes across, hits a cold surface, and it'll form back to a liquid halfway down and then just trickle out of the hose.
Okay.
So think of distillation as really separation. It's how do I separate out everything I want to make whisky from, and how do I leave behind what I don't want.
How do I get the good stuff?
How do you get the good stuff?
It. And how many times would you go through that process?
That's a good question. So we do it twice.
Okay.
So what we'll do over here, just to show you, this is the spirit. That's what whisky looks like before it goes into a barrel.
Okay.
But this is at 63.5%. So that's the heart of the run, the good stuff, as you call it. It may look like vodka, but it's not. It does have its own aroma, so you're welcome to have a smell if you like. But the building blocks of the whisky are already there. So we've retained flavour and aroma in the spirit before it goes into the barrel.
It just smells like pure alcohol, I guess.
It does, yeah. So that's how we start. So that's, and then it's into a barrel for 2 years, at least 2 years in Australia.
So you get the flavour and the colour coming in.
Yeah, that's right, a lot more flavour and colour. But the building blocks are already here, it just takes time for things to come together.
With these, when you said earlier, from grain to bottle, everything in Tasmania, even your stills are made in Tasmania.
Our stills, we're very proud of those. So they were made in Hobart for us. And you know, we sat down with Peter Bailey was the man who made them for us. He's a well-known man in the whisky industry, and we sat down with Peter and gave him a design brief and sort of said, well, this is the whisky we're trying to make, and this is the type of features we'd like, and he's pretty much, he got them spot on to what we were after. So it's important for us to have Tasmanian-made stills at the heart of the place. So the two stills and the brewing equipment Peter made for us, so it's good to have.
So we've learned about your process. Shall we get tasting?
Well, let's do that.
Let's get tasting.
I'm looking forward to this.
I can think of no better place to taste the first Tasmanian whisky of our trip than here, inside Hangar 17 at Launceston Distillery, with my new best friend and soon-to-be whisky dealer, Chris.
What I'm noticing is the demographic of whisky drinkers is changing.
It is.
Vastly. It's not necessarily a gentleman's drink
No, it's
anymore.
not. It's not.
So perhaps for those up and coming and wanting to get into the whiskey world, what are your tips for tasting whiskey?
Okay, so just approach it with, whiskey's going to be above 40% alcohol, doesn't matter. So ours are bottled, this one is at 46%. So whiskey's a strong drink.
Yeah.
Approach it with a little bit of caution, but what people do when they sort of swirl the glass around is they're looking at the colour and also sort of like the viscosity of it. You'll see some legs run down the side of the glass. But the colour kind of gives them an indication of what barrel's been matured in. So we see in this one, it's a nice ambery, coppery colour. That's fairly typical for French oaks, European oaks. Whereas that one is a lighter golden straw colour. That's very typical of American oak and bourbon barrels. So when you see people looking at it, they're getting a bit of a guide to maybe what barrels are in there.
Okay.
So then with the nose, maybe just approach it with a little bit of caution. Swirl it around the glass, just so
intact.
That's right. No, you can before you delve right in, just gently sneak up on it.
Okay.
And really, all people are doing. There's no need to, for people new to whiskey. There's no need to be tasting notes can be intimidating, but all we're doing is put our experiences and our associations with what we're smelling.
Right.
And to you, if that reminds me of my grandmother's Christmas pudding, that's a memory that I'm associating with that particular whiskey, and that's really all people are doing. Yeah, that'd be my tips. Don't be too intimidated by it. Just enjoy it. Yeah, that's right. So now that we've swallowed, you've still got flavours developing at the back of the mouth there.
It keeps going.
And that flavour's still there on the tongue.
And there's definitely those spices like nutmeg and Christmas time by a fire.
That's right. That's it. So the second one I've selected for you is out of American oak bourbon barrels.
Okay.
But this one, as I was saying earlier, notice the lighter colour, but this one is also at cask strength. So it's a whiskey that's done very well for us. But the reason I wanted to show you that is because we haven't added water to it. After it's matured, we've just emptied the barrel.
Right.
And we thought, well, this works well as is. We're not going to dilute this down.
Yep.
So by not adding water, we've retained that, like I say, that viscosity, that mouthfeel. But I wanted to show you this because everything's up a notch compared to the intensity. This is where things get real. So the aromas and the flavours, they're just a lot more intense, and hopefully that mouthfeel too it's just a very pleasant, warming mouthfeel. So again, maybe for this one, you could have a sip first, and then if you want to come back and just add a drop of water, you could do that too.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So notice the lighter colour, and with American oak, people associate the kind of like vanilla dominant, the creme brulee type of flavours. So, but you will notice a hint of the bourbon, the previous fill. That's a dominant character as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah.
What more like honey?
That's right, a sweeter. Yes.
Yeah.
Very typical of bourbon. Just everything is up a notch.
You're not wrong. Wow, that's so much more intense.
It is. It is. Sorry, it may have been a shock to the system.
No, that's great. All right, the final one.
The final one. Okay, so this is our peated release. So I thought I'd give you a taste of this one to see what influenced that little bit of smoky grain that you smelt at the start, what influence that had on the whiskey. So in this particular batch, it's a mix of peated and unpeated whiskey. So we've added some tawny casks and some bourbon casks to the batch as well, to hopefully give it a bit of sweetness to balance the smoke.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be all smoke.
Yep.
It's a mildly peated whisky with, like I say, some sweetness there from the tawny and the bourbon to balance that smoke. So when you nose this one, you may get a faint hint of the peated grain and the smoke.
Yeah.
But it's definitely more noticeable on the palate. So, so you get the sweetness initially, and then as it lingers, the peaty, smoky flavour really develops in the mouth. So this one's at 46%, our standard bottling range. Yeah, we're hoping that it's a nice, approachable, peaty whisky for people who, for people to enjoy.
Yeah. Definitely the smokiness isn't super strong, but it's
meant to be subtle. But on the mouth you'll notice it a lot more. So we'll give it a go. So now do you feel the smokiness and the peatiness?
Couldn't taste it initially.
No, that sweetness is there, and then the smokiness, the peat flavour comes through.
Oh, that's really cool.
So there you go. So that's a peated whiskey to just to show you some of the different styles and things that we can produce.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having us today and showing us all around Hangar 17 and Launceston Distillery. And if people wanted to come and visit, they can come here and do tours?
We do tastings and tours, so we're open every day, or most days of the week, and on weekends by appointment. But no, thanks for dropping in. You guys are most welcome, and I'm glad we got to show you our range of whiskies.
Well, I've enjoyed my time here at Launceston Distillery, and now it's time for me to take off. It's time to make our way into town, where I'm off to one of Launceston's best kept secrets for lovers of craft beer or Tassie gin, St. John Craft Beer Bar. Here, I'm catching up with one half of the geniuses behind native Tasmanian gin label, Abel Gin, sparkling wine and distilling guru, Natalie Fryar.
Nat, you are the head distiller at Abel Gin. Abel Gin is your baby.
It is true, yes, Yazmin. Thank you so much for being here.
Tell us a little bit about where we are right now.
So we're at St. John Craft Beer in Launceston, which is, I guess, my local bar.
Okay.
Gin, my favourite gin bar and watering hole here in Lonnie. And the guys that run it are friends. They're, wonderful. I think I was one of the first patrons here when they opened a few years ago, and it's just fantastic. And they're great supporters of Abel, and we're the house pour here, so quite handy if you're local pouring your own gin.
Exactly. So if you want a glass of gin in Launceston, you come to St. John.
You do. You come to St. John. The guys are great, particularly the back bar. It's the gin bar, and they've got such an amazing collection of gins. I love to come and see what else they've got in, and always doing little gin tastings for myself, which is great.
Yeah, research. It's research.
Very much research, yes.
It's important. And so tell me a little bit about you, because you're not always been in the gin industry.
It's true. My background is as a winemaker. Okay. And my partner and I own a couple of wine companies, which is great, mainly specialising in sparkling wine and Riesling. So there are two great passions. Tasmania is incredibly famous for sparkling wine and aromatic whites, so that's why we're here in Tassie. But when you make super premium sparkling wine, which is what I do, it takes years and years to come to the market. So you make it and then you don't sell it. That's the trick. You wait for a really long time. And when I started my own company, which was back in 2015, I was going, what do I love? What can I do for the next 4 years while I wait for wine to be ready? And it just kept coming back to this gin. You love gin. I knew how to distill because I had to do it as part of my winemaking degree. And then I spent 18 months fooling around in a friend's kitchen with a 1 litre still, distilling every single botanical I could find and creating these two really distinct styles of gin. And and then at the end of 2016, we launched. Tasmania is the most incredibly beautiful place. And it's pristine water, pristine air, the incredible wilderness here.
Yeah.
And everything I'm doing with the making of gin, the making of wine, is around trying to capture a little bit of that so anyone can taste it and experience it.
And taste Tasmania.
Taste Tasmania.
And so what are some of those certain elements or flavours?
So I think, one thing that's often overlooked in the world of high quality spirits is that 50% of what you're drinking is water. Mm-hmm. That's why generally great spirits come from places with incredibly good water.
Right.
And we use Tasmanian mountain spring water. And it's just stunning. And it means everything that we use, we use native botanicals, we use lots of locally grown botanicals. When they're not fighting dirt, when they've got the beautiful base of the water to use, they're so elegant, they're so lifted. I mean, it's incredible. My business partner is Kim Seagram, and I've known Kim since 2001 when she was the marketing manager of the Tasmanian Vineyards Association. And we used to do this little, she calls it a dog and pony show, where we would go out, me as a winemaker from Tassie and she is the marketing director, to talk about the Tassie wine industry. And we've always been friends since that time. Through a mutual friend, I kind of said, I've got this great idea, I've got these wonderful gins, but how do I take it to the next level? She says, why don't you speak to Kim? So Kim and I sat down and she said, this sounds like a great idea, love to work with you again. And so we formed Abel Gin, named after Abel Tasman.
Okay.
Being from Tasmania. And also he was a discoverer, and we believe that Abel Gins are a discovery. We're very fortunate because Kim is Kim Seagram. And she is a Seagram from the Seagram's company, which was once the largest producer of alcohol in the world.
I thought the last name sounded familiar.
A little familiar.
Yeah.
So she's actually now, I think, the only Seagram that is still involved in the distilling industry globally.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, and it's lovely because she actually has some of her great-grandfather's original Seagram's gin recipes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's an amazing history that we just happen to have.
Well, I think we should definitely try some.
Sounds like a great plan to me.
Done.
Okay, so we are going to go, there's going to be 3 gins.
Okay.
Essence, we call it our daytime gin. Quintessence, nighttime gin, and of course, our Christmas gin. Right in the season, perfect.
Yes.
And the reason I wanted a daytime and a nighttime gin is because gin's asked to do a lot of work. It's asked to be a gin and tonic, one of the most refreshing drinks there is.
Yeah.
Also a martini and a Negroni,
Right.
grown-up, serious drinking.
Uh-huh.
So I thought rather than trying to get one gin that will do both of those things, I'm going to make one specifically for refreshment and then one specifically for contemplation. Sipping a martini is different to drinking a gin and tonic.
Definitely.
Different gins.
Okay.
So let's start with our daytime.
Okay.
We call this one fun.
Fun.
We call the nighttime one trouble. The real key here is vibrancy and lift. Citrus, flowers.
The
Yum.
freshness comes through. It's not overwhelming.
Let's have a look at our nighttime gin.
Nighttime.
Quintessence.
Trouble.
And you'll see why in a minute. So whilst the essence is all about the refreshment, this is all about richness, dark spice, layered, complex yumminess. So you can see the difference.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So the most important botanical in this is kunzia. So it's a native Tasmanian shrub, really.
Okay.
And it has, to me, it is the absolute scent of the Tasmanian wilderness. I started the company looking for this scent.
Okay.
Looking everywhere I could to find this. What was the source of this thing that I could, when I was out walking in the wilderness, I can smell this particular thing, and I found it, it's kunzia. And it's pretty ubiquitous. It's everywhere, which is why the Tasmanian wilderness has that particular scent, because it's everywhere and it's highly aromatic. Christmas, growing up as an Australian, is not about brandy and puddings and spice. It's about sunshine and refreshment.
Yeah.
I wanted to capture that feeling of walking through the bush to get to a beach. Maybe having a pine lime splice when you're there, when you're a kid, such a treat to have it.
Of course.
This has 27 botanicals, and every one of them was something that I wanted to capture from an Australian Christmas.
Wow.
So it's sunshine, it's fresh fruit, fresh cherries. There's also a little bit of those fantastic spices that you get at Christmas as well.
Yeah.
But enough talking.
Because I think usually when we hear something that's Christmas flavoured, we automatically go to a
Pudding.
winter Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
all those
we just-
heavier spices.
We just don't have them.
Yeah.
And rather than pretend, I wanted to have a gin that would last the whole summer, that would represent the fact that we have Christmas in our summer holidays.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of character.
But you should be able to taste them. Incredible cherries, but also fresh pineapples and, you know, lovely peaches. I love peaches in summer, so there's lovely peaches in there as well.
Fruity,
Yeah,
fresh,
yeah.
spicy.
Pine lime spice, exactly.
Definitely.
Shall we finish with the gin and tonic?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Cheers.
Cheers.
We've decided to end our day by taking in the sights of Launceston's beautiful Tamar River and sampling some of the local culinary delights here at Mudbar. And at the end of our first big day on tour, I'm sure our crew have worked up quite the appetite. I know I have.
This is what Mudbar is famous for, is their oysters, and they've given us their selection. So we've got a natural, a ponzu sauce, a vinaigrette, and an oyster shooter, which is pickle juice and wasabi. So I'm gonna dig straight in, starting with the natural. That is fresh. So I've been drinking all day whiskey and gin and wine, and I'm gonna finish my day with an oyster shooter, sake, pickle juice, and wasabi. Cheers. That's actually delicious. What a combo. Well, I have absolutely smashed my local Tasmanian oysters, and now I'm going to wash it down with a East Coast Tasmanian Pinot Gris. Thank you so much for joining us on our very first episode of Last Drinks Tasmania. I have had such a great day, and we have so many more adventures to come. But first, I am going to dig into this fresh, locally sourced Tasmanian salmon on a bed of miso sauce and kimchi. And I will see you next time.
Next week on Last Drinks Tasmania, we head to Devonport, where our journey to discover the best beverages in Tassie continues. Visiting two of the state's best gin and cider producers, you won't want to miss it.